know you heard me on the radio, flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio, flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K.
Miami Dolphins fans, Phin-Addict Fury family, Fury fam, what's going on out there? Cosa Nostra, good to see you. Good to see everybody out there. It's another Monday edition of my solo show, Larry K, discussing the Dolphins on the Phin-Addict Fury channel. I hope you guys have been following up. Nene, what's up? Good to see you. Nene is a member of the channel. Remember, you can join this channel by clicking join right here. We are several members strong. You are an official Fury fan member. When you join, you get access to a written column that nobody else gets access to and other features, including when we have panel shows, hopping up first, always getting your comments highlighted, and etc. Remember, the super chats are open, super donations. You can join the channel. If you're here as a visitor, please click subscribe. Help grow the channel. We got to get to 2,000 subscribers soon. Before the season, we need to get to 2,000 subscribers. If you guys haven't done so yet, make sure you're checking out Shakes in the Blender series. He is back for the offseason. He is absolutely killing it. Some excellent guests. Recently had the creator of Dolphins Talk on. He's had several other really good guests, and it's worth your watch. He really has a great format and great content for you guys. So make sure you're checking out. It's usually on Thursdays, but it's been airing several times a week. I am here with you on certain Mondays during the offseason. We are going to discuss the Miami Dolphins. Today, we got tragic news. Former Dolphins cornerback Vontae Davis was found deceased in his home in Florida. This young man was part of that 2009 draft class. That was the second draft class under football czar Bill Parcels, where Parcels brought in the tandem, Vontae Davis and cornerback Sean Smith. That is also the year where we brought in Pat White, because I don't know why, but that regime thought that the Wildcat was going to be here to stay and was going to be something that this franchise could, specialize in and make a serious threat and have some longevity in the league. Sadly, that is not what happened. Another Fury fan member, Jason's in the building. How are you, my brother? Great to see you. You guys can join too. Become a member like Nene and Jason. Just click join to see the details and help support the channel. But Vontae Davis was a part of that 2009 class. Vontae Davis was a pretty good starter for us early on in his career, and there was a lot of hype with Davis and with Sean Smith early in their careers. We were coming off of the 2008 season where we unveiled the Wildcat, where we won the division, which sadly is the last time we won the division now. And there was a lot of fanfare with that cornerback tandem. Sean Smith, if you remember, had the play of the week on ESPN when he caught the one-handed interception near the end zone. And Vontae was a good player. But some of the interesting things about Vontae Davis, I remember his draft day when the news hit that the Phins had drafted Vontae Davis. I still remember that. And I remember when they asked him, how does it feel to be a member of the Miami Dolphins? How does it feel to have been drafted by this franchise? I remember Vontae very distinctly saying, well, man, it's Bill Parcells. That's really all you got to know about that, i.e., a legend in the game, recognized some talent and some promise in me, sufficient to bring me into the Miami Dolphins franchise, and I'm anxious to get going. And he was an exciting young man. He kind of had this almost naivete is the wrong word. Shake Money, my brother from another mother who's holding down this channel, who I just told you got to check out his content. You got to check out In the Blender with Shake right here on the Phin-Addict Fury channel on Thursdays. And remember, join the channel, support the channel any way you can, because we're bringing you quite a bit of content, even in the off season. We're here to bring the objective, well-balanced, thoughtful discussion on our beloved franchise, the Miami Dolphins. So subscribe to the channel, click like, share the link, and go ahead and join or throw a super chat, show some love. But he had this type of air about him of like this almost happy-go-lucky type kid when he joined. And you remember, these players are very young when they come into the league. And Vontae had this very fun, almost innocent energy to him, if you recall in some of the interviews and, some of the content that was put out by the franchise when he joined. And he was fun to watch. He was a player who played with a lot of passion, had a lot of raw talent. And for those few seasons when he was with the Dolphins, which was 2009 to 2011, he showed some promise. The Dolphins go through their transition, if you recall, after Tony Sperano, who also, rest in peace to Tony, gets exiled, which I thought Stephen Ross handled that whole situation pretty poorly from the beginning. He undermined Tony Sperano almost immediately when he took the plane to go visit Harbaugh, and he undermines Sperano. Then he gives him an extension, and then he winds up firing him anyway. This was after Bill Parcells had left the organization because he had an out when ownership changed over, and Stephen Ross took the team over. Bill Parcells said, I don't want any part of this orange carpet, this pageantry, this nonsense. I'm leaving. And we go through this transition. Joe Philbin comes in, and we had that interesting Hard Knocks season, if you recall. The first Hard Knocks, where Joe Philbin's picking up the gum wrappers, and you kind of get your first glimpse at Joe Philbin, who was somebody that initially looked like he could be a suspect hire, and then seeing the Hard Knocks episode, you kind of realize this guy is definitely a suspect hire. And not to get off track and digress, but this is kind of what I've been speaking about Stephen Ross from the beginning of him becoming the owner of this franchise, where his fingerprints are on any hire that seems to be offensive-minded, whether they are or not, just perceived as offensive-minded, with this general kind of Poindexter, nerdy type of persona. That seems to be who Ross goes after. And Philbin was the first example of this, because this was the first time that Parcells was gone. Jeff Ireland was still here, but Stephen Ross had his fingerprints on the franchise. And I recall that offseason, I was actually in South Florida when Hard Knocks began to air that year. I was in South Florida the week the first Hard Knocks episode came out. And I had gone to practice, at the facility back then, and had just gotten some autographs. I think, this hat right here, actually. This hat right here. There's a lot of autographs on here. And I have Anthony Fasano. I have Cameron Wake. And look who I have. Right there. Right there. I think that's Vontae Davis's signature. That's Vontae. He signed this at practice. He signed it right there. Vontae Davis, number 21. He was really nice. And he came up to the fence and signed my hat. The team had a lot of energy around it. And I remember Chad Pennington being much bigger than I thought he was. But if you recall, we were going through some transitions. And we brought Chad Henne in, Chad Henne was the heir apparent at the time, because Parcells had drafted him. And remember, the year before, in 2008, Parcells had drafted Jake Long first instead of Matt Ryan or a quarterback. And then he had drafted Chad Henne in the second round. And Chad Henne fit the bill. If you recall, in those Parcells years, Parcells had a very specific, regimen or specific ranking system and qualification system for his quarterbacks. And Chad Henne fit every aspect. So he was, and these were the times when you weren't necessarily going after, and Raph, it's not an April Fool's joke. We'll get into this. This is, now we go after quarterbacks who look like they're already the ready package. They're superstars in college. They're D1 superstars, and they're going to be superstars day one in the NFL. Back then, you still had some level of development, for quarterbacks, and you went after guys who fit certain criteria and you tried to bring them in. Chad Henne came out of Michigan. So I remember this year when I got the hat signed, and if you guys just joining us, this is my hat that was autographed the year that we went into Hard Knocks. That's Vontae Davis's signature right there on the hat. This also has a bunch of other guys, Anthony Fasano, Chad Pennington, Cameron Wake, all signed this amongst others. But I remember that Hard Knocks year. And that's when Vontae Davis got traded to the Indianapolis Colts. And if you recall, there was this interesting exchange that was talked about quite a bit in social media at the time and on TV and in sports circles at the time, that Vontae, the first thing he says when Jeff Ireland says, we're going to trade you to the Indianapolis Colts, was, can I call my grandma? This innocence, or this, and some words have negative connotations. Naivete has a negative connotation in one way. Immaturity has a negative connotation, and I'm not trying to put a negative connotation on it, but he had this level of youngness, youthfulness to him. And the first thing he says is he looks astounded. He looks generally surprised, and he asks permission to call his grandma. And he gets traded to the Colts. And he plays for the Colts for some time. I believe he had a knee issue or two in his career. He goes to play for the Colts. And I recall him being pretty formidable with the Colts for a couple seasons. Played with them for quite a bit of time. He was there from 2012 to 2017. And finally, after his tenure with the Colts ends, he winds up going to the Buffalo Bills, and things get even more interesting then, because he signed a one-year deal with the Bills, and his one-year deal was worth up to $5 million with $3.5 million guaranteed. And you can tell he's one of these players that, we spend a lot of time talking about players who have great longevity in the league. We spend a lot of time talking about players on our particular teams who have small longevity, right? They play for a little bit and then they're gone. But there are a lot of players in this league who make it a considerable amount of years. Vontae Davis was drafted in 2009. And he played until 2018. That's 9 years. It's almost 10 years. And that is a long time in this league, because the average player in this league lasts about 3 years. These guys go through things because not everybody who plays for 8 to 10 to 11 or 12 years is a perennial starter. And Canes, what's up, my brother? Not everybody is a perennial starter in the league. And a lot of guys, in order to reach that length of longevity, that near decade in the league, they have to find ways to stay on their feet, going from starter or highly touted rookie, or working their way up to starter, and then falling back into, a contributory role as a backup or a special teamer or a rotational starter, and they start becoming journeymen. And this can't be easy on the player's psyche, coupled with the physical toll that we know that football takes on these young people. Vontae Davis, while playing for the Buffalo Bills in 2018, on September 16th, 2018, during a game against the Los Angeles Chargers, Davis removed himself from play during the first half. He stated he was done. And no one knew exactly what that meant. And Sean McDermott was the coach. Vontae Davis left and retired during a game with the Buffalo Bills. And he later commented that his abrupt retirement was due to an abrupt realization that football was no longer what he was meant to be doing, and that leaving football was therapeutic. Now, if you had followed Vontae's career and followed some of the things that he had said. And Tua Side is in the building. Tua Side, welcome, my brother. Happy Dingus Day. Yes, I have been April fooling people all day, but this is no laughing matter with Vontae Davis. But we have been April fooling people out here. So if you had followed Vontae Davis's public persona, some of the things that had gone on with him, whether it be Hard Knocks, whether it be on the Dolphins, whether it be on the Colts, whether it be his abrupt retirement during a game playing for the Buffalo Bills, you would know that there might be some level of concern for his mental state throughout his career and then after. And something that people have to realize is that these young men go into a league and get paid millions of dollars and take a physical toll on their body. And they mostly come from, not all of them, they mostly come from places where I didn't realize that, Mike. So thanks for telling us that, because I did not realize that. They come from a place where since high school and many times even before high school, even in Pop Warner, they are both afforded and blessed with, and in a way, cabined by and limited by a very structured environment where the culture of football, which I must tell you, having close friends deeply involved in the industry of football, for better or worse, is closely tied in with deep notions of personal responsibility, deep connections with the Christian faith, deep quasi-military notions of family and going to battle and putting one's body and health at risk for the good of one's family. And there are regimented, very sometimes rigid cultural implications to that lifestyle. And these young people come up through those cultural mechanisms and then go into this league where those cultural mechanisms are furthered, yet they have some limitations now, because now these are grown adults with millions of dollars. And now they are autonomous, where they have a players union and where the coaches are not so in charge of their day-to-day happenings and their discipline system and things like that. And that's slowly changing as college football and college sports, I would say devolves, but that's another conversation, more into pay for play and unlimited free agency and autonomy. And as even high school athletes earlier and earlier are courted by college programs and in other sports, professional programs. But at the time Vontae came into the league, he was emerging from that very regimented culture of football. And he came from Illinois, which was a Big Ten school, obviously, with, some aspects of proud history itself. So when they leave the league, and especially if they leave the league in a place where they have been physically battered, tossed around in terms of the business, you always hear this, right? You always hear about these former coaches, these players, especially the guys who are very well-versed and have done well. And I recently heard an interview that Omar Kelly and Alan Poupart had done on their podcast, which is an excellent podcast, by the way, where they had Devon Bess on. And Devon Bess was also from this era, if you recall. And Devon Bess had some issues prior to the NFL, before he was at Hawaii playing ball. And then he had some issues during his stint with the Miami Dolphins. And he was somebody, and he is somebody who, it was great to see his interview, because he has really done well after by understanding what he needs to do to better himself, what he needs to do to continue to lead a life that is beneficial to him. And when you hear these guys speak, these guys are always consistently talking about it's a business. The NFL is a business, football is a business, and guys who understand that and come to terms with it and can make it work for them and can accept things, which especially comes from that culture of football, which, move on to the next play, control what you can control, have some serenity about the things you can't control. Those people who can master that do okay. But some people, when they're chewed up by that machine after having such a regimented and guided and structured environment for so many years as a human being, getting chewed up by that business, getting physically battered by that, and maybe having some issues already prior to even becoming a part of football, when they then leave, they are left sometimes with a large amount of money and financial stability, but it's volatile, right? Because that money, if not invested properly, if not used properly, can be squandered or run away. But they are left with not a ton of direction all the time, a ton of financial ability, but not a lot of places to necessarily channel it properly, and a loss of structure almost overnight, and a loss of directional purpose almost overnight. And if you weren't aware, Vontae Davis was charged with a DUI and arrested in early 2023. And he was operating a vehicle and hit another vehicle, causing that second vehicle to actually hit a pedestrian. And that pedestrian sustained several injuries. The driver of the other vehicle sustained injuries, and both vehicles were actually totaled. Vontae Davis and his attorneys secured a plea deal where Vontae Davis had to pay for the medical bills of the injured individuals and got placed on probation. And that was only late last year, in the fall of 2023. Now, if you followed at all, and I believe that was in Broward County, if you followed at all the news during that DUI or the circumstances and context surrounding that DUI, you would know that while Vontae told the officers that he had consumed 2 mixed drinks, he fell asleep on the side of the road after the accident. And when he was being interviewed by police when they were driving away from the accident, he could barely stay awake. This was on video. The reason I bring this up is not to tarnish the man's name or to, cast aspersions on somebody who has just passed away way too early at the age of 35. But it is to point out that when we are acting as fans, or the way that this league functions, while they are worried about marketing rights in foreign countries and extending the schedule to include more games and outlawing certain tackling techniques because they don't want players injured because it affects their bottom line, there are still serious fundamental issues with respect to player stability, players' mental health, and the entire structure of this industry that deserve maybe some more scrutiny or maybe some more focus so that some of the other deeper problems can be addressed. And if you couldn't tell early on that Vontae Davis may be somebody who might slip into some issues and struggles later, then you weren't paying attention. And perhaps it's not only the responsibility of the NFL and those affiliated with it, but perhaps everybody connected could have noticed a little earlier. But the criminal justice system, too, this man clearly had an issue. Clearly could be a danger to himself and other people. Clearly probably had substance abuse issues. And rather than perhaps give more of a consequence or a mandated maybe inpatient drug program or some other legitimate consequence for what occurred when he hit this other car and this pedestrian in 2023, they were content to say, well, this guy has money. He's a former player. As long as he pays the victims, we'll let him off on probation. And now he's found deceased in the home of his grandmother at the age of 35. So a lot of things could have been done. A lot of notice could have been taken. And none of it was done. Based on our knowledge, anyway. And now this young man is deceased. Another in a long line of people with promising futures who, because of the struggles of life, the struggles of our society, and some of the struggles of this industry, is no longer with us. And it's a sad day. It's a sad day for humans. It's a sad day for the NFL. It's a sad day in general. And I don't know that what we can do as content creators or as individuals is something we could talk about or not, but there's certainly more we can pay attention to within this industry and within our society writ large to try to prevent these things, or at least understand what goes into them and what causes them. That's what I would say. So it is a sad day for Dolphins Nation, Colts Nation, even Bills Nation, and just generally speaking for football fans and for the Davis family. So prayers go out to his family, to his loved ones, to his friends. And we hope that this is not forgotten soon, that it is not in vain, and that something good and productive can come out of it. Perhaps more recognition when these players are clearly struggling with certain things, or maybe they need more direction and more mentorship and more support in general. Maybe we can do a better job with those things. Adam, what's up, my brother? Another member. Remember, you guys, click subscribe if you're enjoying the content, if you're enjoying the conversation. Click subscribe, support the channel. We've got to get to 2,000 subscribers before the season starts. Help us. Every subscription counts. Help us get to that mission. Join, become an official Fury Fam member. You'll get exclusive access to the written column that I put out, especially during the season. That's more abundant. You'll get other perks like behind the scenes things. You'll get your comments highlighted all the time. You'll get preference for hopping up on our panels. So consider joining Fury Fam. It's a small amount of money, and it goes a long way for the channel, but it also goes a long way for you. Just remember, there are various ways to support the channel, and we greatly appreciate it, because this is the channel of the serious thinking Dolphins fan. This is the channel of the working guy and girl who goes out to work and still wants some good content from other like-minded individuals at the end of the day, who have that life experience and go through that life grind every day, but they still find it important enough to discuss our favorite team and to do so in an objective, balanced, and thoughtful manner. Even though sometimes I rant after games, and that's what I've become semi-famous for, the rants. We appreciate everybody who joins us, and we provide that level of content. Cap, they have not given the cause. We can only speculate, and I don't want to speculate, but we do know that there was the DUI conviction last year where Vontae looked like he was not in good shape from a mental standpoint. And so we can only speculate. We should wait on that. And I don't think that the way that the media goes about speculation, it's one thing to point out issues that we know about. It's one thing to have a discussion. It's one thing to delve into some of the issues we see with players in general, but it's a completely another one to completely speculate. So not going to speculate, but we have some context here, and that's what we have. We don't have any other actual concrete information. It did take a little bit for the news to actually come out, because obviously it's April Fool's Day. I was guilty of it. I shared a Tyreek Hill's retiring story, all in good fun for April Fools. I shared some other stuff, but so people weren't sure. It's nothing to joke about. It wasn't a joke. And the news eventually did confirm and was able to report it. So we don't have the actual cause or anything right now. And that's something that can be discussed at a later time when we actually have that information. And Michelle, thank you so much. Those rants are for the fans. It's the normal, common sense, objective, critically thinking, rational fans' thoughts are usually the same thoughts as I have. And so that's generally where those come from. So, it makes sense. But, in other news, we can continue talking about Vontae. But in other news, Raheem Mostert has gotten a new contract with the Miami Dolphins. I believe it's worth up to $9 million. It's a 2-year deal. It was a restructure extension. I think Raheem greatly deserved it. I love Raheem Mostert as a person, as a player. And this is what I mean, right? Like these guys with any kind of longevity in the league, they sometimes go through the ebbs and flows. Not everybody comes in and is a linear trajectory from developmental player to perennial starter, right? And not every player is a perennial starter from jump and then remains a perennial starter. Some guys have stop and starts. Some guys have setbacks with injuries or off seasons or, being saddled with a system that doesn't utilize their strengths as much, or a coach or a front office that doesn't love them, as much as others. And so they have to go through these ebbs and flows. And having a career with longevity in the NFL is a challenge for most guys, for most rank and file guys. It's not an easy task. For most rank and file guys that are not always talked about, unless you're a fan of a specific team that they are on, the NFL is a tough slog, and it's a test in resiliency, and it's a test in mettle and getting through things. And Raheem Mostert is a great example of that. I mean, the guy was essentially a role player for most of his career in the NFL. And last year, he just absolutely went off. He broke the all-time touchdown record for the Miami Dolphins. He broke Ricky Williams' record first. Then he broke the all-time scoring record for the Miami Dolphins in a single season. And he was really a great player for us last year. Broke 1,000 yards, rushed for 1,012 yards on 209 carries last year. 18 rushing touchdowns, 21 total touchdowns, both franchise records. And he's got his kids, he's got his wife, he loves South Florida, and it's great to have him back. That's one of the things that I really applaud this offseason was extending him. The thing is, past production doesn't necessarily predict future success, and I'm not knocking Raheem. He stays in excellent shape for somebody who's in his 30s. He looked absolutely determined. He looked absolutely awesome for most of the year. I actually think we should have relied on him much more. And I think if we had relied on Raheem more in certain situations, in certain games, I actually think we would have won more games and the season might have ended differently because he was such a force. What I like about Raheem Mostert that I don't necessarily see from the entire franchise, but I love about Raheem Mostert is that he plays with a certain chip on his shoulder. And he plays with a certain level of heart and soul and determination that you can't teach and you can't measure in a combine. He brings another element to the team. And it's important to have guys like that get rewarded with contracts and tangible, rewards, and to keep them around because they are culture builders and they are pillars of culture. And Raheem Mostert is that guy. Now you have Devon Achane behind him, had a really electric debut as a rookie. Injuries, and I think the way the offense was being called, as well as the way that defenses had started to wisen up to our offensive philosophies, harmed him later in the year. But when you have a running back room of Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, and then you got guys like Jeff Wilson, you have a solid room. I still think that with this offense and these personnel, this quarterback, these receivers, I still think that the Dolphins could benefit from bringing in, I don't want to say bell cow because you got Raheem, who's going to need carries, and he should get them. You got Achane, who should be more involved in the offense, as electric as he is. But you need a guy who can get between those guards and those tackles and bruise up defenses and bring another element to the team, especially when teams game plan for us and approach us expecting the speed and the finesse. If you could punish them between the tackles with a punishing runner who you can consistently feed and therefore also preserve guys like Mostert and preserve guys like Achane so that they don't get injured and hinder our offense, it's better. So I do still want to see Miami bolster that running back room. We know that the Dolphins had offered Odell Beckham a deal that has yet to come to fruition. I told you I'm not the biggest fan. I know some people think it'd be a great signing because we need him. I recently heard that I actually heard it on the Blender with Shake, so make sure you're watching. There's a lot of good stuff on there. But I heard that, we need a third receiver who's formidable and can get open because our entire offense runs through the wide receiver room, and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle have gotten hurt. And therefore, we need another third receiver who has that level of ability so that we don't miss as much of a step when those guys go out injured. But I still think that a Cedric Wilson was a formidable receiver, except we hadn't given him enough run and we hadn't explored his strengths and his abilities and what works for him enough so that when it came time to have to use him, I think it was on the coaches, on the quarterback, etc., that we couldn't get him more involved. And the more that I digest the season and the more that I digest the state of the Dolphins heading into next season and heading into the draft, the more concerned I am about coaching and quarterbacking. And the more I think that Wilson's run into the end zone against the Chiefs and the duck throw by Tua was not Wilson's fault. The more I think that was a problem with coaching and quarterbacking where they didn't have enough of a feel or chemistry for Cedric Wilson, and they seemed like when they didn't have full use of Tyreek or Waddle, or when those guys were being honed in on by defenses, we didn't really have answers. And the more I think that we need to figure out ways around that, and I think one of the best things to do is to bolster that running back room and that offensive line and to do something about it. Now, I will say that I think the Dolphins on balance kind of are a wash, meaning I think the Dolphins lost some formidable and serious players, but then they got some. As I predicted, and the offseason's not over, right? We have the draft now, and I'm curious to see what Miami does in the draft because it's going to be very telling about what they think our needs are. If we go out and draft a wide receiver high, or a defensive back who isn't a thumping coverage capable safety, but another cornerback, then I think the philosophy of this front office is really got to be questioned because if you're concentrating only on the perimeter, I'm not sure where we're going. But I think that we upgraded the tight end position. I think as it stands now, the offensive line is a little weaker than it was. I think two of the biggest needs on this team so far, two of the biggest deficient position groups, I think, last season were undeniably the linebacker unit and the tight end unit. And I think that we have upgraded both the tight end room and the linebacker room. I think Barrett, AVG is close to a wash, I would have rather had AVG because AVG is a homegrown guy who was a culture builder and flew around with his hair on fire. And he had a lot of upside. To lose him, I think, hurts the team because he was also, there are certain guys that are just playmakers. They're always around the ball. They make plays. They are playmakers, period. And AVG was one of those guys. He was recovering fumbles. He was picking the ball off. He was causing sacks. He was causing fumbles. You need guys like that. Those lunch pail guys that also make huge, impactful plays. We lost that when we lost AVG. But overall, I think the linebacking core got better. And I think the tight end room got better. So those are two positions that we have already improved upon. But when you look at the secondary, okay, we had to get rid of Xavier Howard because he was going to be a cap casualty. We all knew that was going to happen. There was no way out of it. We got a decent replacement, and we'll be maybe okay with that. Safety, you get a Poyer. You like the player. We've been his adversary for so long that you recall him playing us tough and hitting hard and etc. But he's 32. He's kind of a one-year rental at this stage. You had Brandon Jones. You had Elliott. They were good players, and especially Elliott. I mean, he was an upgrade this year at safety, and you noticed it when he was out of the game. Poyer's formidable, don't get me wrong. But he's kind of a plug one-year guy, and we wonder how much is left in the tank. But it's not a huge negative. It just is what it is. But what I worry about with the philosophies of this front office is the trenches. They don't ever seem to put enough emphasis on the trenches. And whether people like it or not, whether Roger Goodell likes it or not, whether the competition committee likes it or not, football is still a game won in the trenches. It's still a game of momentum and push and pull for inches. And we lost Christian Wilkins, which, I don't know if there was a way we could have locked up Christian Wilkins for a reasonable price prior to him entering free agency. We may never know. So, at the price Wilkins left for, you can't blame the Dolphins for moving on because it's just overpriced for a defensive lineman. I don't care how good he is or how much of a culture builder he is. We couldn't pay him that kind of money. And there could be a similar argument for Hunt on the offensive side of the ball that the money was a bit much. Now, again, is Christopher, as Nene likes to say, Christopher Aloysius Greer, does he have a stubborn number where he won't get off no matter what? And if they don't meet that number, he says, go prove yourself, bet on yourself. Yes, Nene, the good old sounds of Newark. The sirens and the bustle and the hustle right outside my window right here. They're all here. Does Greer have that in his head and he won't back up off of it? But guys might take something if he negotiated before free agency, or are these guys just saying, I want top dollar, and if I don't get top dollar, I'm hitting the market? Because that's a big difference depending on which one of those is true. That's a huge difference, and it's a different conversation depending on which one is true. But we couldn't pay Wilkins. I don't know if we could have or should have paid Hunt, but I do know that our trenches have gotten weaker. So the draft now is very interesting because if the front office puts emphasis on a young, tough defensive trenchman or a young agile / mauling offensive linemen or both, then I know that they have the right philosophy and know how to complement the pieces they already have in order to get us to the next level. And also to win with this quarterback, this coach, and these personnel. We have finesse-esque, speed-based skill players, and we have a finesse-based, speed-oriented offensive philosophy and offensive system. And you have to complement and offset those guys with tough guys on the interior of both lines. That's the only way this team is going to succeed. I think they did it in the linebacking core. And I think it was needed. I think it's part of the philosophy of our incoming defensive coordinator. And I think it's a good start. But I want to see them continue to do it. I want to see them continue to do it. And I want to see them continue to bolster those lines. Remember, even though we have Shaq Barrett, we still don't have Phillips and Chubb at 100% at the start of next season. And so we've got to make up for that somehow. And I'm curious about the draft. I am very curious about the draft. Because it goes a long way to showing us what this is. This organization really just going to gaslight us and tell us we're fine? Or is this organization going to take the common sense steps we all need to be taken in order to get us to the next level? That's going to be a really interesting thing to see, and that's what I'm waiting for. As of now, it looks like kind of a wash, maybe kind of right in the middle with upgrades to the linebacker and the tight end room, which were needed. Jordan Brooks is an upgrade over Baker, and Jonnu Smith is a good addition to the tight end room, who has a better way, who has the ability to add a passing element to the game that we desperately needed, I think. And I don't even think Smythe was bad. I just think now we're even better. Isaiah Wynn with another 1-year deal. I think he was good before he got hurt, but they're still going to need to do more in the trenches. So we will see what direction they go. And obviously the elephant in the room is Tua Tagovailoa. What's his contract going to look like? Why is it taking so long? Why is it taking so long for the contract with Tua Tagovailoa to come out, to get done? Is it because they're working out all of these specifics? Or is it because, there's some disconnect between the price or what Tua's going to get? Or, what he can get and still have a team around him. I will stick to my general take that Tua is the kind of quarterback that needs a very good supporting cast around him, and you can't give him such a bag, as they say these days, that you thwart and hinder yourself from signing the right players and putting the right supporting cast around him going forward. But a lot's going to hinge on what we give Tua and how much money we have left to spend, not just this year, but in subsequent years. And you got to remember that what I've seen from these free agent signings, by and large, are we have jettisoned players that cost too much, and we have signed players, with the exception of a Brooks, and some other guys. For the most part, we've signed guys on 1-year deals. We've signed guys that are, hey, we're plug and playing you this year because we still want to be contenders at least we think we can be contenders. We're still going to play, pay and play you this year because we're not completely rebuilding or kicking the can down the road. But we are opening ourselves to be able to have more long-term solutions in the future, or to pivot to an extent if this season doesn't work out. It's interesting to do that if you're going to lock down a quarterback for an astronomical amount of money. And if they're able to lock down a quarterback for a reasonable amount of money, I think it also says a lot about the state of the event of the franchise, the mindset of the organization, and their general philosophy as far as where we are going from this point forward. Now, we're getting a visit from Quantez Stiggers. He is eligible for the draft. He's a Canadian player, a defensive back, has been very good in Canada. Quantez Stiggers. We have had luck with Canada, as my autographed hat with Cameron Wake can tell you. I think Javon Holland's actually from Canada too, but we've had some luck. That's an interesting person there to backfill that defensive backfield. We'll see what happens, but I want you to remember that as we're going through this offseason process, other teams are not sitting stagnant. Look what the Jets are doing. They've built some serious stuff over there. They have Aaron Rodgers coming back from injury. Do I think the Jets are Super Bowl contenders with Aaron Rodgers or whatever else? I don't. But I don't know that we are either with our current makeup. I don't think we are. I mean, we've shown that we've completely collapsed and failed 2 seasons in a row at the end. And the reason I bring that up is you can't just be sitting here talking about whether we were a wash or we improved, 1 or 2 position groups for the Miami Dolphins, and not also understand and take note of the fact that, other teams in our division and other teams in the conference are going to get better as well. You've got to take those things into consideration as well. And we have a super chat from Carlos. Carlos, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you for your contribution to the channel, and thank you for supporting the channel. We always love to see super chats. Anything you can give at any kind, whether you're a member, whether you're donating as a super thanks, whether you're contributing a super chat to be featured in the live show with your chat highlighted, it's always greatly appreciated. I did see something like that too, Carlos, that it was a $56 million guaranteed overall contract for $280 million. I was thinking that was April Fool's, to be honest with you, because I saw a lot of laugh faces. I hadn't seen it confirmed anywhere else. These memes and these news things have been going around a lot ever since the season ended. You have the troll posts that Tua has been traded to the Minnesota Vikings going around. You have then the counter troll posts that Tua has gotten signed to a massive contract. And every time these news stories come out, people start talking. They get on their soapboxes. They start talking trash to each other. They start getting into it. But I haven't seen anything confirmed quite yet. Now, $56 million would be absolutely astounding. And I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility here, Carlos. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen. I think it certainly could, because you don't know what this franchise is capable of doing. And you know that Tua commands quite a bit of fanfare. And Tua commands quite a bit of butts in the seats and merchandise sales. So I wouldn't put it past our old buddy here, big-eared Steve right here. Carlos, I wouldn't put it that much past big-eared Steve to do something crazy like that. But I, for one, think that if we were to make Tua that much of a high-paid player, we would be completely and severely handicapping our and his success for several years going forward. I just don't see why or how we could pay that exuberant of a contract. I am crossing my fingers and crossing my toes, which are 10 down, as you guys know, that we would and will give him somewhere in the 40 mil range. Because I think for somebody who needs a supporting cast, 1 and 2, really hasn't shown the ability to put a team on his back at any point in his career, that's fair. I'm not saying to grossly underpay him. I'm not saying to diss him. I'm just saying that seems fair given the context that we have here. And Color is in the building. I want to shout out the Phins Tailgate. Color commentary. Color is that dude. He is in the building. Thank you for being in the building, my brother. It's great to see you and hear from you. And that's what I said too. I think that's fake news. There's a lot of these fake news wars with the Minnesota Vikings trade and the highest paid ever, memes and all this nonsense. I think that was an April Fool's joke. Troy says, Larry, I've given up any hope of seeing this mediocre franchise win a championship in my lifetime. P.S. Tua is not good enough to win a Super Bowl. Now, look, I think that there was so much fanfare last season with where things were headed, where things were trending, and what was going on that we all got very excited about the possibilities of this franchise. But I think that the end of last year, and Nene says, she thinks Tua comes around June. I could see that, right? The draft is over. You know what you're working with. You know what your team looks like. You hammer out some of the, you hammer out some of the issues. You hammer out some of the specifics. You hammer out some of the details. And maybe you get that contract and deal done in about 2-3 months around June. Going into the spring camp is going on. You're going into August training camp. You're getting ready for the season, and you lock down your franchise quarterback. I could see that happen. And Nene says, I'm sure Pete created the rumor. I wouldn't doubt it. I think Pete, that's a Pete move, right? I mean, that's a move Pete would make, I'm sure. So Pete might have started that rumor or made that meme. I could see that, Nene. I really could. And Shake throws down money. Thank you, sir, for the donation. Shake Money, the co-host, the Phin-Addict Fury, co-pilot here, has thrown down his own donation to the channel, which is greatly appreciated, my brother Shake. And he says, Tuaniers called the cops on you. Now you have to prosecute yourself. Go easy on yourself. Bro, you got to watch out. That's true, bro. I'm going to have to prosecute myself for Tua slander on this channel. This channel is going to be in deep trouble with the Tua Shake. And that's what goes on. But here's the thing, too, and it's in reference to Shake's comment, too. It's like, and Troy, and this goes with what Troy's saying, too. And thanks again for the donation, my brother. But Troy says, is Tua a franchise quarterback? My answer is this. What criteria do you need to be a franchise quarterback, right? Because if it's, and this was Troy's thing. Nene, thank you very much for the donation. Vastly appreciated. Taking this Monday show out and sitting with you guys and talking to you. It's a pleasure. But when we get some support as well for the channel, that's also always a perk. So I greatly appreciate you, throwing down that donation to send love. And it's greatly appreciated, Nene. And that's why you were the first interviewed on In the Blender. You are a loyal Fury fan member, and we greatly appreciate it. We appreciate your presence here, too, because you add so much to the conversation, as we all know. And I greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate you in general and all your perspectives, and you as a member of Fury Fam, Nene. I'll say that if the criteria is to win a Super Bowl and to have a guaranteed shot at winning a Super Bowl, then the answer is no, right? If the answer is a top 10 quarterback statistically who is a proven starter out of 32 in this league, then he is. Now, Troy says, win big games, win come from behind games against elite teams. Well, then if that's your criteria, then he's right on the borderline, Troy. I don't think he is. But I think the Dolphins consider him one. And I think there's only so many quarterbacks in this league that can play at a high level, whether it's a system quarterback level, whether it's a spot throw, whatever you want to call it. Even if that's how Tua plays the game, he still does it pretty well, especially for half the season. So unless you're going to get a better option, I think Tua is a franchise quarterback. Is he going to win us a Super Bowl, especially if he gets paid so much that we can't develop a cast around him? I don't know if he is. But is he a franchise quarterback that I think we should pay a decent, considerable amount of money and lock down? I think he is. I think you have to pay him a formidable amount of money. I think you have to lock him down for a number of years going forward. I just don't think you have to pay him so much that he's one of the top 2-3 quarterbacks in the league, and you hinder yourself because he's shown he needs a supporting cast. And Nene with the big donation. Thank you very much again, Nene, that picture of Ross. I'm going to keep hitting everybody with that picture of Stephen Ross all the time until he's gone or he changes his philosophy or he proves me wrong by showing that his Poindexter, big-eared, Stephen, New York City, Hudson Yards Ross is better at this than people like me know and has made the right decisions, because this cat right here has done so much damage to this team. I don't care. I know he built the stadium, and that was good. But how about that logo nonsense that he's pulling on us? How about these dorks that he keeps hiring? I don't know. How about Christopher Aloysius, who the jury's out on? The jury's out on Christopher Aloysius. Nene, I don't know if he's good or not. What I do know is that this stuff comes from the top. And so I appreciate you recognizing my philosophies and my prowess as a content creator to put that dude on the screen and talk about him because he needs to be talked about. Just like these guys. This channel was not for these guys. These guys will do anything the franchise wants to do and will get behind and co-sign anything the franchise wants to co-sign. And it's got to stop. But I'm not a hater or a negative either. I'm not going to sit up here and diss them nonstop all the time for everything they do. But I'm also not going to act like that clown and a little fanboy and just make them think that giving Tua the bag or winning in September and October is enough to keep me happy, because it's not. I've seen that. I've seen this franchise win in September and October virtually my whole childhood and most of my early life, half my life. I don't care about it anymore. I want to win a championship. I want to at least go to a championship game. I want to be competitive and believe in my team going into the playoffs instead of falling flat on my face and going out like a lamb. Even though March is going out like a lion up here in Jersey. It's cold and it's rainy and it's gray and it's April. I mean, stop already. Give me some nicer weather. I need it. But I'm not looking forward to those allergies, Nene, as you know, because I get them too, and they're coming. They're not here yet, but that pollen's going to lurk. And Troy says, and thank you again, Nene. It's much appreciated. Fury fan member all day, every day. Nene stays in the set. We got a tight-knit group in here, guys, with the Fury fan people that are real ones. We got real ones that are affiliated with this channel. Real ones. Troy says, Larry, past 2 seasons, how many big games against elite teams did Tua win? Not many. Not many. And I think that's a legitimate thing we have to look at. That's why you don't pay him that much money. And here we have Newark, New Jersey blog, which is a legendary individual in the city of Newark, New Jersey. James, who's just a legendary photographer, content creator himself, force on social media, and somebody who always highlights the great things about our city, which I am a part of. And that even connects to our Dolphins, since I'm a force in the Dolphins community. and I hail from this city. Welcome, my brother, watching from Twitter, and thanks for joining us, man. Thanks for the shout out. You're my dude, man. It's great to see you, and it's great to hear from you, brother. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, I'm sick of just winning early in the season, Troy. And Tua, I don't know that he'll ever get us where we want to go, Troy. That's the truth. I don't know if he'll ever get us where we want to go. But to let him just walk, I think would be foolish if we didn't have a better plan in place. But also to pay him an exorbitant amount of money would be foolish, because you should know by now that Tua needs a supporting cast around him to succeed. And not just a mediocre or average supporting cast, but an exceptional, above average supporting cast to be able to succeed. And so you're going to have to pay him. You're going to have to pay him with that in mind. And I think all this talk about how good Tua is and how good of a person he is and all that, he could still be a good person and want his money. But if he's not willing to take a deal that puts the team in better position to win, then I don't know if his priorities are what we would want from a quarterback when we're trying to win a championship. That's what I don't know. And I know, Jason, you're right about that. And that's why I don't think it should be an exorbitant bag. I think they're going to give him some kind of bag, but it's got to be reasonable. It's got to be within reasonability. It's got to be reasonable. We've got to give him, if we're going to give him a bag, it's got to be reasonable. Jason, what's up, my brother? Another Fury Fam member is in the building, guys. Remember, you can join Fury Fam officially by clicking the join button. You get access, I'll say it again, to a written column. You get access to behind-the-scenes perks. You get access to things on the channel when we do the panel shows. You get preference to come up. When you make a comment, it gets highlighted every time almost. So, consider joining Fury Fam officially, like Nene, like Jason, both Jasons. Consider it. G is in the building. G is in the building, up to his old antics. He says, Dolphins breaking news. Dolphins get Herbert. Vikings get Tua. Chargers get number 21 pick per Adam. But it's April Fools. There's a lot of April Fools going on out here. And Nene, you're right. Pollen is the devil. It's the devil. And Color says, Larry, you should move down here before New York drops to the 5th largest population. I mean, it's coming, man. I love it down there. I'm down there a lot. I'll be down there again soon. And I'll definitely be down there for more games this season. So I hope to see all you guys there. But I'm going down there soon. I'll be down there soon, hopefully within the next couple months, to go see family, hang out, and get my dose of South Florida, which I always need. I'll be in the, that Palm Beach area, that Broward and then Dade area. I'm always up and down that little tri-county area when I'm down that way. But we'll see. We'll see. I think Tua gets signed. It's just a matter of how much. And so this is what I'm looking for now as the offseason continues. This is what I'm looking for. I'm looking to see what this front office's philosophy is going forward. And we're going to find that out by how much they pay Tua and what they spend their draft capital and remaining salary capital on. Is it trench bolstering? Are they bolstering the offensive and defensive trenches, which I think have gotten decidedly weaker so far this offseason? Or are they continuing to double down on the glitz and glamour and finesse of the perimeter and telling us that we're fools for caring about the trenches on both sides of the ball? Now, I'm not going to be mad if they invest in an edge early on, because you have 2 injured edges going into next season. And even when they come back, you're unsure if they're going to be up to the same speed they were pre-injury. And you can never have that many good edges on a team anyway. But other than that, if they don't invest in the trenches, I'm going to have serious concerns about where the franchise is headed. And when it comes to Tua, if it's a deal that makes sense and is lower than some of these bag posts and jokes are reporting, then I think the franchise and Tua might be in the right frame of mind. But if they go above and beyond and handicap us for several years, I think that Ross is only in the mindset of increasing revenue, putting butts in certain seats, and doesn't care as much about winning. And that logo stubbornness and some of the other things he's done lead me to believe that is who he is. He only cares about merchandise sales and things of that nature. But we will see. And Jason, a member, says, I don't think him getting a crazy deal is a lock. The team is saying all the right things, but I'm not sure they're ready to pay him. And Jason, if it's any indication that it's dragging out longer, it's very possible that they are negotiating the bottom line and that he may not be up for the bottom line for that reason. Greg says we're drafting a wide receiver round 1. And look, some people are already saying we should. And I think that's lunacy. And if he does it, I'm going to have a real problem with it, and you're going to hear about it on this channel. Nene says, listen, it's a business. I think Tua wants his money. Greer is in a tough situation. Next up, Holland and Waddle to pay the bag. She puts the bag emoji. And Edge, I think, is a big need, Jason, because these guys, you can't count on them to come back to full speed, and you're not going to have them early in the year. You already know that. You already know you're not going to have them early in the year. You know that. So it is a big need. I agree with you. And Nene says it's a business. He wants his bag. I don't blame Tua for wanting his bag. But at what point do you make enough money where you're already generationally rich and you want to go down with the legacy of winning a championship, and you know to win a championship, you're going to need a supporting cast around you that's capable of doing it? At what point does that rubber meet the road? What's the right nexus on the graph where it's enough money, but you also can win a championship? That means something to me as an observer. Does Tua have that in him? And do the Dolphins have that in them? I want to know that. I'm curious to see, when it comes to all parties, what the philosophy is and where this team is going. I'm curious. And Sam Skeet, I mean, I like your number there. 40 to 45 mil is what I want. That's what I want. And Troy, I mean, one of the things is, can Tua stay healthy too? You give him the bag and he doesn't stay healthy. He stayed healthy one season so far. That's a concern with every quarterback. It's a concern with Joe Burrow. That's a concern with Joe Burrow. But Joe Burrow has the other angle where he's gotten to a Super Bowl and 2 AFC championships. And Caller says the rubber meets the road at about Spirit Lake in Washington. So we'll see, guys. We will see. But sadly, this working man on this working man's podcast has to get back to the daily affairs that need my tending to. And Michael K says, Tuna isn't worth the big contract. I guess Tua is now called Tuna, just like Bill Parcells. But Tuna's not worth the big contract. I don't think he's worth getting paid over 50 or even 50. I got to say that. I do think he's worth a decent-sized contract. We will see what happens. But look, remember what I said about Vontae Davis. We have to have that discussion, and that should be an ongoing discussion in our community. Rest in peace to that young man. Way too young. Way too much promise. Way too much success so early in his life to go that early. We have to have these discussions much deeper and much more consistently. And Michael K says, that being said, sign him to $55 million a year for 8 years. He's a Bills fan. What do you want him to say? Look at his friggin' avatar. It's El Cap in a Bills shirt. I mean, this guy the stuff he shows on this channel. But I have to get back to that, guys. Those of you who watched, who donated, it's so greatly appreciated because it keeps the channel going. But not only that, it keeps the channel reinvesting in itself. There's some things I have on the horizon. I was able to put together that intro. I was able to get the video software to put together that intro. I'm able to keep, the bandwidth and the StreamYard abilities to have Shake and his shows on and my shows and to do what we do in the season and the off season. So it's huge to support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to the channel, whether you're a newcomer just seeing it or whether you've been here and you check in on me every so often, whether you love me or hate me, please click subscribe, because if you're getting any kind of entertainment out of it or anything from this channel, it greatly helps the channel if you subscribe. We're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers by the start of the season. Please contribute to that and please click subscribe. And remember, check out the options to become a member. There's other things you get, including a written column where this objective perspective and well parsed out analysis comes through in written form for you to consume on your own time. So think about becoming a member like these guys, the Jasons, Michael K, Nene, all these awesome people who are members. Consider becoming a member. Share this video with people. Let them know that what we do on this channel with the objective analysis, the real discussions, the balanced approach, and the community contributions, what we are able to do on this working man's channel. Spread the news, spread the word. RIP Vontae Davis. We know where we stand with the Dolphins this offseason. Let's see where they go. The draft will tell us a lot. Free agency will continue to tell us a lot. I will be here with you every step of the way. Remember to tune in to Shake this week on In the Blender. He's got some great guests coming up for you. We look forward to talking to you again and again and again. And I'm so glad I got to spend this Monday afternoon with you guys. I will catch up with all of you very, very soon. Phins up. Larry K out.
I know you heard me on the radio flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all